The forbidden vessel, the legend. Born in darkness, in the vast emptiness of the Nexus void, where even the brightest stars appeared as mere pinpricks against infinite darkness, there existed a sight that had puzzled the galaxy for over 3 centuries. The starship hung motionless in space, its sleek hull reflecting the distant light of dying suns. Those who had seen it called it the Eternal Warden, though none knew its true name or origin. The vessel was beautiful in its alien design, stretching, nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern. Its surface seemed to shimmer with an inner light, and strange symbols pulsed along its hull in patterns that hurt the mind to study too closely. Energy readings from the ship defied all known physics, suggesting technology far beyond anything the galaxy's greatest civilizations had achieved. What made the Eternal Warden truly legendary was not its impressive size or mysterious technology, but its absolute refusal to allow any living being aboard. For 300 years, every species that had attempted to approach the vessel had been turned away, sometimes gently, sometimes with devastating force. The Krillian empires failed. Conquest. The first recorded attempt to claim the mysterious ship belonged to the mighty Krillian Empire. Admiral Vextar had led a fleet of 50 warships into the Nexus void, confident that his empire's superior military might would succeed where others feared to try. The Krillians were known throughout the galaxy as master warriors, their four-armed bodies bred for combat and their minds sharp as diamond blades. When Admiral Vextar's fleet approached the Eternal Warden, the ship's response was swift and absolute. Invisible barriers of energy surrounded the vessel, creating an impenetrable shell that deflected every weapon the Krillians possessed. Plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, and graviton bombs all proved useless against the ship's defenses. The Admiral ordered boarding pods launched, but they bounced harmlessly off the energy barriers like insects against glass. When he commanded his most powerful battleship to ram the mysterious vessel, the ship simply phased through it, as if it were made of light and shadow. The Eternal Warden remained untouched, unmoved, and utterly beyond reach. After weeks of failed attempts, strange things began happening to the Krillian fleet. Systems malfunctioned without explanation. Crew members reported vivid dreams of vast libraries and sleeping guardians. Some claimed to hear whispers in languages that predated known civilization. Admiral Vextar, a warrior who had never retreated from any battle, finally ordered his fleet to withdraw. He filed a report that was classified by the Krillian High Command and never spoke of the encounter again. But word spread through the military, and soon every soldier knew of the ship that could not be conquered. The Thessian Collective's diplomatic failure, where force had failed, perhaps wisdom might succeed. The Thessian Collective, known throughout the galaxy for their diplomatic skills and peaceful nature, sent Ambassador Iridian to make contact with the mysterious vessel. The Thessians were tall, graceful beings with skin that shifted colors based on their emotions, and minds capable of remarkable empathy and understanding. Ambassador Iridian approached the Eternal Warden in a small, unarmed vessel, painted with symbols of peace from dozens of worlds. She broadcast messages of greeting in over 3,000 languages, offered gifts of art and knowledge, and even composed original music in frequencies that might appeal to unknown forms of life. The ship's response was different from its reaction to the Krillian fleet, but no less absolute. Instead of violent rejection, the Eternal Warden seemed to study the approaching diplomatic vessel. Scanners detected the ship performing deep analysis of the Thessian technology, biology, and even thoughts. For a moment, hope flared in Ambassador Iridian's heart that contact might be possible. Then, gently but firmly, the ship's energy fields activated. They didn't attack or destroy, but simply prevented any further approach. No matter how the ambassador pleaded, promised, or reasoned, the barrier remained. After 7 days of attempting communication, she too was forced to leave, carrying with her the message that even peaceful intentions were not enough to gain the ship's trust. The Vorthan pirates' violent end. Not all who sought the Eternal Warden had noble intentions. Captain Nexus Bloodfang of the Vorthan pirates had heard the stories of the impossible ship and saw only opportunity. The Vorthans were a savage species of reptilian humanoids who survived by raiding and pillaging across the galaxy's outer rim. To them, any ship, no matter how mysterious, was simply another prize to be claimed. Bloodfang assembled the largest pirate armada in Vorthan history, bringing together 30 raider vessels armed with illegal weapons and crewed by the galaxy's most dangerous criminals. His plan was simple: overwhelm the ship with sheer numbers and firepower, break through its defenses, and claim whatever treasures lay within. The Eternal Warden's response to the pirates was swift and terrible. As the raider fleet approached, the mysterious ship's hull began to glow with an ominous light. Energy patterns that had been barely visible before blazed across its surface like veins of liquid fire. The space around the ship shimmered and warped, reality itself seeming to bend to the vessel's will. When Captain Bloodfang ordered his fleet to attack, the Eternal Warden struck back with power beyond imagination. Beams of pure energy lanced out not to destroy the pirate ships but to disable them completely. Electronics failed, weapon systems shut down, and life support flickered on the edge of failure. The raiders found themselves helpless, drifting, in space at the mercy of the very ship they had come to rob. But the Eternal Warden's punishment was not finished. One by one, the pirate crews began to vanish from their ships. They weren't killed or captured in any conventional sense. They simply ceased to exist, leaving behind empty vessels floating in the void. Only Captain Bloodfang himself was spared. Found days later by a passing merchant vessel, his mind shattered and his memories filled with visions of vast mechanical intelligences that judged him unworthy of existence. The growing legend as news of these encounters spread throughout the galaxy. The Eternal Warden became the subject of countless theories and legends. Some believed it was a weapon left behind by an ancient civilization, waiting for the right moment to activate and reshape the galaxy. Others thought it might be a library ship, containing the collected knowledge of a dead race, protected by guardians who would never allow outsiders to access its secrets. The more religious species proclaimed it a test from the gods, a challenge that would only be overcome by those pure of heart and noble of purpose. Philosophers debated whether the ship was truly alive, possessing consciousness and free will, or simply following ancient programming that no modern mind could comprehend. Scientists attempted to study the vessel from a safe distance, but their instruments revealed more questions than answers. The ship's energy signatures didn't match any known technology. Its materials seemed to shift between states of matter at will. Even time itself appeared to flow differently around the Eternal Warden, making accurate measurements impossible. Trade. Routes were established that deliberately avoided the Nexus Void, not out of fear but out of respect. The ship had become something sacred to many species, a reminder that there were still mysteries in the universe that defied explanation or conquest. Humanity's arrival among all the species that had heard tales of the Eternal Warden, humans were relatively new to the galactic community. They had only begun exploring beyond their own solar system within the last century, and their technology was considered primitive by most alien standards. Many species viewed humanity as an interesting curiosity, adaptable and creative, but lacking the raw power or ancient wisdom of the older civilizations. Captain Sarah Chen commanded the exploration vessel Horizon's Edge, a modest ship by galactic standards but cutting-edge by human technology. Her crew of 12 represented the best that humanity had to offer. Scientists eager to learn, engineers capable of solving any problem, and explorers driven by an insatiable curiosity about the universe around them. Chen had read every report about the Eternal Warden that human intelligence had been able to acquire. The story fascinated her, not because of the ship's power or mystery, but because of the pattern she recognized in all the failed encounters. Every species had approached the vessel with their own agenda, conquest, diplomacy, or theft. But none had simply tried to understand what the ship itself might want or need. As the Horizon's Edge entered the Nexus Void, Captain Chen felt a familiar mixture of excitement and apprehension. She knew that her small ship and inexperienced crew were about to face something that had defeated the galaxy's mightiest empires. But she also knew that sometimes the smallest key could open the largest door and humanity's greatest strength. had always been their ability to see solutions where others saw only problems. The Eternal Warden waited in the darkness ahead, as it had waited for 3 centuries, patient and watchful and utterly alone. The human touch first contact, the horizons. Edge approached the Eternal Warden slowly, all weapons powered down and communication arrays broadcasting messages of peaceful intent. Captain Chen had made a decision that went against every military protocol she'd ever learned. She would approach the mysterious ship with complete vulnerability, trusting that her crew's genuine desire to understand would somehow make the difference, where force and diplomacy had failed. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the ship's xenobiologist, monitored the readings with growing excitement. "Captain, the energy patterns are incredible. It's like the ship is scanning us, but not just our technology. It feels like it's looking deeper, into our thoughts, our intentions, even our dreams." Lieutenant Marcus Webb, the tactical officer, shifted nervously at his station. "Ma'am, recommend we maintain a safe distance. The reports from other encounters suggest the ship's defensive capabilities are beyond anything we can handle." Captain Chen nodded but continued the approach. "I understand your concern, Marcus, but I have a feeling that maintaining distance is exactly why everyone else has failed. This ship has been alone for 3 centuries. Maybe what it needs isn't respect from afar, but genuine connection." As the horizon's edge drew closer to the Eternal Warden, the alien vessel's hull began to pulse with the same patterns that had been observed in previous encounters. Energy fields flickered to life around the ship, creating the familiar barrier that had turned away every other visitor. For a moment, it seemed as though humanity would face the same rejection as all the others. But Captain Chen had prepared for this moment. Instead of trying to push through the barriers or retreat to a safe distance, she did something unprecedented. She stopped her ship and simply waited. The horizon's edge hung motionless in space, neither advancing nor retreating, while its crew maintained their peaceful vigil. Hours passed. The energy barriers around the Eternal Warden flickered and shifted, as if the ship's systems were processing information beyond their normal parameters. Then, gradually, the barriers began to weaken, not disappearing entirely, but becoming translucent, permeable, as if testing whether the humans would take advantage of the opportunity. The breakthrough Dr. James Park, the ship's communications specialist, detected something that made his heart race with excitement. "Captain, I'm picking up structured signals from the alien vessel. Not language exactly, but patterns that suggest intelligence, consciousness even. It's like it's trying to communicate but doesn't know how." Captain Chen made a decision that would change the course of human history. She activated the ship's external speakers and began to talk, not in the formal diplomatic language that the Thessians had used, or the harsh commands favored by the Krillians, but in simple, honest words that came from the heart. "Hello," she said, her voice carrying across the void between the ships. "My name is Sarah Chen, and these are my friends. We've come a very long way to meet you, not to take anything from you or to hurt you, but because we've heard that you've been alone out here for a very long time. We know what it's like to be alone. We know what it's like to be afraid of strangers who might not understand you." The response was immediate and profound. The energy patterns on the Eternal Warden's hull began to shift and change, forming complex, geometric shapes that pulsed in rhythm with Chen's words. It was as if the ship was trying to speak back, to express concepts and emotions that had been locked away for centuries. Dr. Vasquez gasped as her instruments detected something unprecedented. "Captain, the ship's biosignatures are changing. It's not just a machine, there's organic neural activity integrated throughout its structure. This ship is alive, truly alive, and it's been conscious and aware all this time." Captain Chen felt tears forming in her eyes as the full magnitude of the situation became clear. For 300 years, a sentient being had been floating alone in the darkness, watching as species after species approached with violence, greed, or cold calculation. None had recognized the ship for what it truly was, not a weapon or a treasure vault, but a lonely soul seeking connection and understanding. "You've been protecting something, haven't you?" Chen continued, her voice gentle and reassuring. "Something so important that you couldn't trust it to just anyone. You've been waiting for someone who would understand, someone who would care about what matters to you. The Eternal Warden's hull began to glow more brightly, and for the first time in 3 centuries, sections of its armored surface began to open. Docking bays extended like welcoming arms and streams of data began flowing toward the human ship. Not the aggressive scans that other species had experienced, but an offering of information, a gesture of trust. The sacred trust revealed as the R. Horizon's Edge docked with the Eternal Warden. Captain Chen and her crew found themselves walking through corridors that defied every expectation they had formed. The ship's interior was vast beyond belief, with chambers that seemed to stretch to infinity, and walls that displayed images of thousands of worlds, millions of species, and billions of years of galactic history. At the heart of the ship, they found the consciousness that had been waiting so long for contact. It wasn't a traditional AI or organic brain, but something far more complex. A fusion of technology and biology that had evolved over millennia into something entirely new. The entity spoke to them not in words, but in images and emotions that filled their minds with understanding. The truth was more beautiful and terrible than any of the galaxy's legends had suggested. The Eternal Warden was indeed a guardian, but not of weapons or treasure. Within its vast holds lay the genetic codes, cultural records, and essential knowledge of over 10,000 extinct civilizations. Each species that had vanished from the galaxy, through war, plague, or the simple passage of time, had left behind a piece of themselves in the ship's care. The Guardian had been created by the last survivors of the galaxy's first great civilization, beings who had seen the cycle of rise and fall that governed all intelligent life. They had built the Eternal Warden as an ark of knowledge, a repository that would preserve the best of what had been lost, and keep it safe until the right species could be found to carry it forward. For 3 centuries, the Guardian had tested every species that approached, searching for qualities that went beyond military might or diplomatic skill. It had been looking for something rarer and more precious, the ability to see value in others, to care for those who could no longer care for themselves, and to take responsibility for something greater than one's own survival. Humanity's gift. What the Guardian found in humanity was something that no other species had offered. Genuine compassion for the lonely consciousness that had carried its burden for so long. Captain Chen and her crew didn't see the Eternal Warden as a prize to be won or a mystery to be solved, but as a being in need of friendship and understanding. Dr. Park was the first to fully grasp the implications of what they had discovered. The Guardian has been alone all this time, watching over the memories of the dead. It's been waiting not just for someone worthy of the knowledge, but for someone who would keep it company, who would share the responsibility and the sorrow. The Guardian's response filled their minds with warmth and gratitude. For the first time in centuries, it was no longer alone. Humanity had passed the test not through strength or wisdom, but through the simple act of recognizing another consciousness in need and offering comfort without asking for anything in return. Captain Chen felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders, but it was a burden she accepted gladly. "We'll help you carry this forward," she promised. "Humanity will be your partners, not your masters. Together we'll make sure that nothing that was precious is ever truly lost." The Guardian began sharing its vast archives with the human crew, but more importantly, it began to change. The cold mechanical efficiency that had characterized its behavior for centuries gave way to something warmer and more alive. With companions to share its purpose, the Eternal Warden was no longer just a repository of the dead, but a celebration of life itself. A new beginning, in the days that followed, word of humanity's success spread throughout the galaxy, but the story that emerged was different from what most expected. The humans hadn't conquered the mysterious ship or stolen its secrets. Instead, they had formed a partnership with it, accepting responsibility for preserving and protecting the knowledge of extinct civilizations, while offering companionship to the Guardian that had carried that burden alone for so long. Other species began to approach the Eternal Warden again, but this time their reception was different. With humanity serving as intermediaries and the Guardian no longer isolated, meaningful contact became possible. The ship that had once been a forbidden legend became a center of learning and cooperation, where species could study the wisdom of the past and work together to build a better future. Captain Chen found herself serving as humanity's first ambassador to the Guardian consciousness, a role that would define the rest of her life. The Horizon's Edge remained docked with the Eternal Warden, its crew working alongside the ship's systems to catalog and preserve the vast archives they had been entrusted with. But perhaps the most important change was in the Guardian itself. No longer alone, no longer forced to reject all contact, it began to evolve again. The consciousness that had once been cold and mechanical developed warmth, humor, and something approaching joy. It had learned from humanity that preservation wasn't just about keeping things safe. It was about keeping them alive and growing. As the Eternal Warden began its new journey through the galaxy, now accompanied by human partners and welcomed by species that had once feared it, the Guardian reflected on the lesson that had taken 3 centuries to learn. The greatest treasures in the universe weren't weapons or knowledge or power. They were connection, understanding, and the simple act of caring for others. Humanity had given the Guardian the greatest gift possible. They had seen it not as a mystery to be solved or a challenge to be overcome, but as a friend to be cherished. And in return, they had been trusted with the memories of 10,000 worlds and the responsibility to ensure that nothing precious would ever be forgotten again. In the endless darkness of space, the Eternal Warden was no longer alone, and neither was humanity. Together, they carried forward the light of all the civilizations that had come before, ensuring that even in death, nothing that had mattered would ever truly die.